My name is Alan Theisen, and I am a collaborative composer. Join me in the search for a career in classical music. This is the Making Noise podcast.
Whatever you want. So, is that a Los Pollos Hermanos shirt?
Yeah, it is. Los Pollos Hermanos.
That is fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, man. I've had this shirt for a few years now.
Yeah.
It's getting to the point where there's like tiny holes developing, you know. But
That's when a t-shirt gets good. It's seasoned.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You
I like
know?
that. It's like a skillet, like a cast iron skillet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Until a t-shirt has just like not even holes, but like just those the threadbare little patches. Man, that's when a t-shirt just gets great.
Yeah.
What scotch are you drinking, man? I gotta know.
Oh, yeah,
what are you
yeah.
drinking?
I have two things actually. I have this
Okay.
beautiful decanter.
Yeah, look at that.
My wonderful girlfriend got this for me on our 2-year anniversary.
Wow, that's great, man.
So-
Is it like it looks like it's lead crystal? Right?
Yeah, it is.
Right.
And I have the matching glass right here.
There you go, man.
You know?
That's perfect. That's
It's a
perfect.
beautiful thing. But this is Johnny Walker Red.
Nice. All right, far out.
What are you working with?
I am working on the Port Charlotte 10-year heavily peated. My brother Mark Ballard got me into this, and it is fantastic. It is really peaty, and the older I get, I mean, I've just gotten to the point where it's a bit masochistic at this point. I just I want it to taste like I'm just eating a peat bog.
Oh my
and then I'm
God.
like, perfect. And I used to like be the exact opposite, just opposite. Like 15 years ago, I wouldn't go anywhere near like an overtly peaty scotch. And now I'm like on this bizarre hunt to find the world's peatiest scotch.
I love that. I love that
Yeah.
search. The
Yeah,
search
right?
is a beautiful thing.
Exactly. I mean, I did the same thing with, as did many other people with India Pale Ales, like 5 or 6 years ago when it was the rage. Everybody got to this point where they were like, what is the hoppiest IPA I could ever taste? And then once you find it, you're like, well, this is dead to me now. I don't give a shit about this.
Yeah.
By the way, are you gonna like beep out cuss words or leave them in, or what's the policy there? Because I get a little sailor-esque sometimes if I'm not careful.
You know what, man? That's the way of the wolf right there, and I do
Yeah,
too.
all right.
So
Okay, far out. Let's do it. Cheers.
I have to say, this is a Making Noise podcast first right here. So cheers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? The scotch during the podcast?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, far out. Oh my God, that is damn fine. I've been teaching kind of nonstop all day. I just wrapped a 90-minute practice session right before this. I just put my horn away. So actually, I haven't had that much to eat today.
Oh.
And I just poured myself a healthy 2 fingers there. So this might get really interesting is what I'm saying. So I'm looking forward to it.
You know, here's the thing: is like the title of the podcast is Making Noise, right?
We're gonna make noise, man.
So we're gonna make noise.
Gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I have my aromatherapy candle going. I have my scotch. We're gonna have a great time.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same position. I have eaten today, but
Okay.
I worked out beforehand, so I expended a lot of energy.
Right. Yeah, you do the workout session that goes straight to the scotch.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right.
The thing that I gotta say is like, to me, like having a sip of scotch and like swishing it around in your mouth, it's like a refreshing like peppermint or something, you know?
Yeah.
Like
oh, absolutely.
Or like you know Rhonda Taylor.
Yeah.
So one time Rhonda and I were talking about the refreshing feeling of going outside at like 5 a.m, like that crisp air,
Right.
and like the
right.
silence with no one around and stuff, you know?
Yep.
That's what I feel like with scotch.
I'm going to yes and you with that. With scotch, yeah, it's that 5 a.m. on a crisp, like slightly foggy morning, and you go up to last night's campfire, and it's still burning a little bit, but there's like the smolder, there's the smoke that's still like curling up, and you smell that. I think, yeah, that's it. That's the vibe.
You just brought this in a direction that I love. I'm like so psyched that we're here.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do it. We're just starting. This is like minute 2 or something. I'm not sure. Like let's
it could be hour 3. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, time, as much with everything in our society, is completely a construct. So let's just dive. Let's just dive into it. Let's dive into it. How have you been? Are you well?
Yeah, I think for the most part. I mean, yeah. It's funny. The composing world for me has been completely, not completely, but it's been a big challenge for me lately. And so I've been trying to battle against the whole resistance of every other thing, every other, daily life issues, or like other things. I'm like tapping on emails and what have you, and that whole thing. But other than that, I think I'm in a pretty interesting spot right now, honestly, like psychologically and emotionally, feeling pretty balanced for the most part, which it's like a great spot to be for me,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something you got to work on. That's a daily work item, isn't it? Finding that equilibrium.
Yeah, and it's a constant, it's a constant challenge. And what's that one? Was like the Declaration of Independence or whatever, the pursuit of happiness, right?
Yep.
Like that wording is so accurate. The pursuit,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't guarantee happiness. It guarantees the pursuit of.
Yeah. Right? Like you're always in search of that thing in order to find, to be in that place. But
yeah, absolutely. And that's, the pursuit of happiness also means leaving comfort. I think comfort is overrated. Yeah, I think that comfort is a value that our society has that does oftentimes more damage than it does good. And I want to be really clear. I'm not talking about comfort from the standpoint of the bottom parts of Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like having shelter over your head, that isn't comfort. That's survival, right? Having access to adequate health care, that's not comfort, that's survival, right? So I don't want people to get the wrong impression. I think once you have those things secured, if you have shelter secured, if you have food secured, if you have if you have your health secured and the well-being of others around you secured, that's I don't count that under comfort. I think comfort is, all right, well, I've been working this job for 15 years. I don't quite like it, but well, it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, there's a serious issue in that. Which is what I think you're getting at with complacency,
That's exactly it. Once you get a little too comfortable with your situation, I mean, a casket's comfortable.
Oh wow, that's a great line.
All right. I'm gonna put that on a T-shirt. A casket's comfortable.
You should. Oh my God. Well, all right. So then I like what we're talking about right here. But two questions for you is how are you doing? And then the other one is how do you revel in discomfort? If that's the right wording. I don't know if I said that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. The school that I teach at is blessedly safe. We've kept our COVID cases down, which is really great. Then again, I teach at a really small liberal arts school tucked up in the Western North Carolina mountains. We have 1,000 undergrads total for the entire campus. We're not exactly a party school. A party at Mars Hill University is like 3 guys getting together to play Xbox all night.
Right.
So that's really, exactly. That's really kept COVID cases down. And there's the ratio of faculty to students is really low. Which means I'm not coming into contact with 50 students in a lecture hall every day. So I'm safe in that regard, and that's really great. Yeah, I don't know. There are definitely times where I get too comfy. I get a little too cozy, and that's okay. I think sometimes, human beings go through periods of that, and that's fine, but it's nice to recognize that those should be islands, in the ocean, where you get to rest for a little bit and then you dive back out. I think there's the danger, though, that you stay on the island too long, right? Then you end up eating coconuts for the rest of your life.
Some people that sounds like the dream.
Some people that sounds like the dream, yeah. And that's I don't know. And the funny thing is, again, I think some people might be listening to this and going, "Oh God, Al's just giving us some really idiotic dude bro culture motivational talk stuff." But I think as musicians, we don't like comfort. You know how uncomfortable it is to learn an instrument at a professional level, to sing opera? That's not comfortable. It takes so much stepping out of your comfort zone for decades in order to be able to do that. So I don't think I'm saying anything crazy when I say that comfort can kind of be the enemy, right? We're comfortable in our mother's belly.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we're comfy. And the second we're out, we're in it.
Yeah.
You've got to go. You've got to find something to do. Comfort is not a guarantee, and I don't think we should be striving for that. I think the most beautiful things in life come when you're not comfortable.
That's an interesting perspective. I haven't thought of it like that. The literal sense of being in the womb is comfort, right? Because you don't have to do anything except just like be a bottom feeder almost.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, everything is taken care of for you. Your survival is guaranteed. Your comfort is guaranteed. That's where you're at. And the second you're born, those parts of the equation are completely thrown into question.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's funny to think about the fact that one of the first things that's, when you think about a child being born, one of the first things you think about is the doctor holding it and it crying.
Yes.
It's like, is that us realizing the moment, like, oh shit, we got to do this now?
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, we're in it. Let's go. We are absolutely in it. I'm reminded of, there's an Isaac Asimov. Is it? No, it's an Arthur C. Clarke short story where it's documenting the dying moments of an astronaut. And at the end of the story, the astronaut begins to scream out for his mother, and he's screaming and screaming and wailing and screaming and wailing. And of course, that screaming and wailing becomes the screaming and wailing for a mother when a child is born.
Right.
So the point of the short story is documenting that moment of death into rebirth.
Oh my God.
Of reincarnation. And it comes out of nowhere. You think you're reading this short story and you're like, oh, okay, it's Arthur C. Clarke. It's a science fiction story. That's what I'm reading. And then literally in the last paragraph, he just sucker punches you and goes, psych, this is a short story about reincarnation. Wahaha. And it's fantastic.
That's heavy.
It's so heavy. I haven't read it in 25 years, and I haven't needed to. I'm forgetting the name of the story. But I read it once 25 years ago, and it's just kind of stuck in my soul ever since.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so evident in the way that you describe it. And even you talking about it right there, like, I just got hit with this wave, you know, I'm like, oh man, that's heavy.
Yeah, exactly. And so, whenever we see media depictions of a newborn baby crying, I think to myself, oh, maybe that's the death wail of its prior lifetime.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So welcome to the podcast. You're like, why did I have this fucking psychopath on? What is his deal?
No way, man. This is exactly what I'm in this for. I love this. I love this.
Man. This
yeah.
great.
I embarrassingly, well, I don't even want to say embarrassingly, but like I'm not much of a reader of like fiction and stuff, you know. And
Yeah.
I could maybe riddle off some of the stories I read in school, but
Right.
one of the things that comes to mind when you tell that short story, or retell that short story, is what's that is it Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart or something like that?
Yes. Yep. Telltale Heart.
Isn't
Edgar
that
Allan Poe.
story a similar sort of outline where it's like they keep hearing this sound, and then by the end of the story it's like, oh, it's because they buried the body under the freaking house?
Yes.
Like
Yes. Yeah. Where the protagonist is a murderer, and you know they're hearing the heartbeat underneath the floorboards, and that's just it's fantastic. What a great, you know, I think all of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories would be just easy opera adaptations, and I'm like, come on, y'all, let's get on it.
well, I mean, Mr. Alan Theisen.
Yeah, I know. I actually, I have to say, I had plans over the past few years to do a radical reworking of Edgar Allan Poe's Cask of Amontillado as an opera. And have since jettisoned those plans for reasons I won't go into, which is bizarre for me. I know I just said like 10 minutes ago everything would be on the table, but it was for what I wanted to do with it. I realized that a white dude should not be telling the story the way I wanted to tell it. And I just went, okay, I'm just going to leave that as a thought experiment in my own brain. I'm just not going to do that. You know, so that's why, you know, sometimes it's wise to recognize as a middle-aged white dude that some stories are not yours to tell. And that's what happened with me. And I went, okay, well, I'm just going to check that then. I'm going to check that at the door, keep that in my heart as a thought experiment, and not tell that story that way. That's not a reinterpretation that is mine to tell. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's a challenge to figure out how to navigate certain story arcs that you want to portray in a creative sense, you know.
Yeah.
I think one thing is I have no doubt that the longer you sit on it, if it is something that you truly want to do, the longer you sit on it, you'll figure something out that'll be like, this is the way I should do it, you know, that.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
but
absolutely. I have a second opera idea, and I think I might do that one first. I would really love to do an operatic retelling of the classic Western High Noon. And it's not because I'm a fan of Westerns. I'm a fan of that movie, which is a bit of an anti-Western in several ways. And I would like to write the opera and tell it in real time, right? Just like the original movie operates, right? It's 90 minutes to high noon and 90 minutes elapses in the course of the movie. And so I would like to try the same thing with the opera, right? So that, you know, it's 90 minutes to high noon and the opera is 90 minutes. And then once it makes it to the 90-minute mark in the opera, that's noon.
right.
I think it would be a lot of fun to do.
I love those sort of story arcs where it's happening in real time, and
I'm a sucker for that shit, man.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I really dig it.
yeah, I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head that do it outside of that, but
There's a movie from the 90s. It's not very good, but it has Johnny Depp and Christopher Walken in it called Nick of Time.
okay.
That is told in real time. And it's an okay movie. You know, it's peak 90s Walken, and Johnny Depp at his, like, you know, kind of, he's in that transition period where he's like trying to break away from being Tim Burton's right? And do, you know, even more mainstream stuff. And, you know, it's okay.
Was that was like what was the movie he did with Marlon Brando? Choco Latte or something like that, or was that?
Oh yeah. Chocolat, I believe. God, who was it Julia Binoche? Who is Julia Binoche? I'm forgetting how to pronounce her last name. She was the French actress. And yeah. Johnny Depp, man, that guy has had an interesting filmography. Have you ever seen Ed Wood?
No, I haven't seen Ed Wood yet, but that's on my
Dude,
list.
check that out. It is secretly, like, I think that's my second favorite Tim Burton movie. It's
Really?
really fantastic. Yeah, totally fucking bombed at the box office. Everybody was like, "Oh wow!" From the guy who gave us Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, and Batman, and
Hmm.
it's like, I mean, but it's a fantastic conceit. The idea of doing a biopic of one of the most notorious B movie directors of all time, and to do it as a neo B movie.
Right.
But then that's kind of fucked up, right? Because Tim Burton was handed this giant sack of cash by a major studio, I think Warner Brothers, to make this movie, and he turns in a movie that deliberately looks bad.
Right, right.
I mean,
Yeah.
if I were a Warner Brothers exec, I'd be like, Tim, come here. I'm going to fist fight you.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
What did you do? But I mean, I think that was Martin Landau won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in that movie. And it's a phenomenal performance. It's really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. It's an interesting sort of thing to look at, like to receive for Tim Burton to be given all this money to pursue this project that's almost like anti-Hollywood in a way. Like not exactly,
Absolutely.
but you know, what sort of things do you see like that in music?
Oh, I mean, well, it's kind of funny because it reminds me a lot of. So there's a really great podcast called Blank Check, where they talk about that. They talk about directors who have enormous success early in their careers, and basically from that point forward, they can make whatever passion projects they want to for the rest of their lives. Like, no matter how good or how bad their movies are from that point forward, they will always be greenlit on projects, even if they haven't had a successful movie in 30 years, because Hollywood will always be like, well, but this is the person who gave us X,
Right,
right? They
right.
had this magic. And Tim Burton is absolutely one of those cases. It's like he has Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and then Beetlejuice, and then Batman 1989, which just blew things wide open.
I have that mask too.
Oh, hell yeah, you do. And then Edward Scissorhands, and it's like, this cat can do no wrong. Like, he's coming up with all these bizarre stories. Everybody's buying into it. And then he does Batman Returns, and the people are like, okay. And then does Ed Wood, and then folks are like, okay, really, Tim, what are you up to? And then he gets to this point where he just like remakes other people's properties for the next 20 years. Like, that's how he ends up doing shit like Alice in Wonderland for Disney, and he does the remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and he does, right? So yeah, it's kind of fascinating when you take a look at composers who have big success early on. I talk about that with some of my students a lot, where you take a look at Stravinsky, where he has this incredible run of these early ballets. You do the Firebird, boom. You do Petrushka, boom. You do Rite of Spring, boom. And then does Les Noces right after it, which is like Rite of Spring Part 2, but still hip. And then, what do you do after that? And it's like, well, here's his octet.
Right.
which is an incredible piece, right? But like, you have to push yourself into a completely different direction, I think, when you have that young early success. And it's always fascinating to me to see people who have success pretty early in their career. And it's funny because, we all sit around, we're like, oh, goody, wouldn't that have been great? Or wouldn't that be great if I were to get that? And I'm like, I don't know. That could be an awful lot of pressure. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know her, but you think about Caroline Shaw. Partita is just such a phenomenal composition. It wins the Pulitzer, blows everybody's minds.
Grammys.
Right. And I'm like, oh, Caroline. Like, holy cow. This brilliant woman, what's the next step? And that's wild, and I think about Kendrick. It's like, what's the next step? What do you do after that? I think about, I think about people like, digging back a little bit, but Shostakovich was 19 when he wrote his first symphony,
Mm.
and it was performed internationally. Like, what do you do after that? That's so that puts just enormous pressure on you as a young artist. Um, yeah, that's wild.
It's an interesting thing, man. I like it makes me think of like child actors and I don't know, like Justin Bieber, for example. You
Right,
know, I mean,
right.
like that dude hit success immediately at like 15, 16, you know?
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
like the prime example of 20th century, Michael Jackson.
Right,
Like
right.
but
Yeah, my hot take on Michael Jackson. I was just talking about Michael Jackson today, actually, in one of my classes. Is that my hot take is that that incredible run in the 1980s when Michael Jackson went from Michael Jackson, member of the Jackson Five, to the King of Pop, um, has more to do with Quincy Jones
oh, totally.
than Michael Jackson, right?
Totally,
Like
yeah.
those three albums, Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. I'm like, come on. I mean, look, no doubt, Michael Jackson, a talent that is once in a generation. But
Right.
to me, truly, the talent that's a once in a century behind those three albums, that's Quincy Jones.
Well,
You know,
that's the thing about Michael Jackson is he isn't even an example of what we're talking about because he wasn't the one creating it. He was the
right?
one performing it.
He was the one executing it, right,
Exactly. Quincy Jones was the creator, the brains behind it, right?
right. Yeah,
Yeah. So I
exactly
mean,
right.
but
Man, you want to talk about a cat who had a career?
yeah.
Who still has a career. He's still going. He's still going. That cat's like
Yeah,
147.
he's old, man. He's
Yeah, he's
like
probably working on wife 19.
yeah, he kind of
Something.
is.
He's like, oh, I don't know. I'm like 87. Might be time to have another kid. Ha ha ha. And I'm like, what are you doing, Quincy? He's like, yeah, I just got back talking with, it's wild, man. Quincy Jones. Have you watched that? Have you watched that documentary on Netflix just called Quincy?
Yeah, the one that Rashida made.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is just remarkable.
It's a
Like
powerful documentary.
it is. It is. I've watched it like 3 or 4 times, and I tear up multiple times during
Yeah.
it. Just watching a human being operating at that creative level, and also somebody who is self-aware enough to acknowledge his personal shortcomings. That's something that's really powerful about that. He makes no bones about the fact, where he talks about, yeah, this marriage I messed that up. That was on me. And I don't have a great relationship with X and Y and Z of my kids because I wasn't there. And that's, that takes a bit of courage in a major documentary to fess up to that. And yeah, that's tough, but he does it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that's something that I definitely walked away from as well. Especially during the period of his life where he was having what was it, like heart issues
Yeah,
or something like that, and he got really into yoga.
yeah. Yeah, and he had I think it was a stroke or something like that, where they had to basically do brain surgery.
Right,
And
right.
that was the end of his trumpet playing career too.
Yeah, that's something you can't handle.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're no longer a performer. That's tough. But when you're Quincy Jones, he's like, oh well, forget about it. I'll just write 20 film scores now.
Yeah, exactly. Let me write Thriller. Like,
Yeah, exactly. I'm just gonna produce 3 of the biggest selling albums of all time in a single decade. And in the middle of all that, We Are the World, right? He was
oh
producer.
yeah, that's
He was
right.
producer on that. Like, we laugh at that tune now, but like that was one of the best selling singles of all time, right?
Was it really?
I think at the time it was. It was the biggest selling single of all time, and it raised a ton of money. He was like only Quincy Jones could get that crazy talent pool in the same room at the same time, right? That was Quincy. Of course it was Quincy, right?
I kind of wonder too, is I I feel like, and this is just my perspective being, you know, a 31-year-old 2020, like the 1980s almost feels like the first decade where pop singers was like, being a pop singer was like iconic and like I don't know how to explain it exactly, but my point being that I wonder if that has to do with why it was such a big hit, because they had like Cyndi Lauper, Richie or Lionel Richie, and like every other, you know, singer of the 80s on there.
Yeah, I think the advent of the music video and the or rather the rise of the music video in the 1980s also created pop music stars who weren't just superstars but who also became brands.
Mm,
Right? I mean, Elvis was huge. The Beatles were huge.
yeah.
And they might have had a ton of merchandise. Like, yeah, you know, in the early 1970s, you could go to a store and get a TCB pin from Elvis, you know, taking care of business or whatever. But like, starting in the 1980s, you have pop musicians whose image is burned into the collective consciousness as much as their music is. And that's when you start getting pop stars who are like, oh, yeah, well, I'm in movies and I'm on TV shows and I have my own line of perfume and I'm going to write these books and buy my headphones. And it's like, so this idea of not just having merch, but you're a brand, you're an umbrella, right?
Mm.
That's, you know, think about Michael Jackson, think about Madonna. You know, Madonna's a pop star, and here she has like the #1 New York Times bestseller. It's a book called Sex. And I'm like, you know, that represents, I think, a major cultural shift. You're right. I think that's 80s, and I think a lot of that has to do with the rise of the music video. You know, we're not just hearing pop stars, we're hearing and seeing them. We are welcoming them into our homes in a media way heretofore unknown. And I think that changes absolutely everything, you know?
That's fascinating. It makes me think about like wondering, was there ever a point where like the music that people listen to, it wasn't just music anymore, it also became like a lifestyle? You know, it's like thinking about in the 80s, was it the 80s or the 90s, when Vanilla Ice had to validate himself by saying he had a rough upbringing to prove that he was a rap artist, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I wonder at what point, like I'm sure that was always there in some capacity, but I wonder at what point it was so prevalent with the general public, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back way farther than we like to think it does. You know, Jelly Roll Morton made a name for himself by, you know, by continuing to tell stories of the fact, oh, well, you know, I was raised in a brothel and I lost my virginity when I was 12 and I invented jazz and stuff like that, right? So he was a personality. And he knew that, and he used that personality to tell stories and tell his story and to help sell his music. You know, it goes back to classical music in the 19th century. It's like, oh, wait a second, you know, perhaps Paganini sold his soul to the devil to be able to play violin that good. Well, you didn't hear Paganini like calling bullshit on that story, did you? He might not have been the one to start it, but he sure as hell isn't going to stomp it out.
Right.
You know, it goes back to Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, right? You know, Papa Mozart says that, hey, this is my kid. And, you know, he tells folks that his kid is a few years younger than what he actually is. It's marketing, you know,
Right.
come on. And we've been doing it for forever.
Well, what about the fans? So like my personal experience is like I grew up in middle school and high school. Like I was into punk rock, you know.
Yeah, all right.
Like fast paced, aggressive, wearing a mohawk, like that sort of thing.
All right.
And like when one of the punk bands that I liked, if they became mainstream, it was like, fuck that, man, I was there first. Like, you know,
Yeah,
you don't live punk like I do, you know.
Yeah, for sure. You know, that's like, Yeah, if artists have been doing this for centuries, I'm sure fans have been doing it for centuries, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. That'd be fascinating to go back and see. You know, go back hundreds of years, see what folks think.
Yeah, I
I have no
wonder.
idea.
I
I have
wonder
no
about
idea.
that. I mean, it kind of does, like when you mention Paganini and stuff, it brings to mind those stories you hear. I don't know if it's true, but like when you hear about women who were swooning over him or Liszt when they were performing.
Liszt. Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. There's the story that like Liszt would get done performing and you would hear the clanking of hotel keys hitting the stage. Which I've got to admit, man, that's just dope. I love
Oh
that.
yeah,
I
totally.
love that. That dude's got some serious energy going.
Totally.
If that story is true,
Well,
right?
like one thing too, I don't even know if this entirely relates, but like the feeling of having an entire audience like have a shared or like a shared collective um I don't know, emotion or feeling towards what you're doing. And like to be a little bit more specific, besides like throwing keys to say like, hey man, I'm
Yeah,
gonna hook up
yeah,
with you,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like on a ballad where everyone has their lighter out.
Right,
You know,
right.
like how beautiful is that?
Oh, absolutely, man. Like to me as a performer, that's why I do it.
Yeah.
That's why I do it, you know. I want that from the audience. I want to see that audience reaction. I want to know that they're having a moment and feeling something, you know. Megan and I have been in a duo for the past almost 4 years, and one of my favorite moments that she and I have ever had when we were performing, we were doing a concert. This is last April, April 2019, and we were doing this piece by Mara Gibson, and there's just this phenomenally delicate, intimate moment where Megan and I are both making sounds at the edge of audibility, and we take a breath and we come in on the exact same pitch. And when we did it, we were so in tune with each other, just like breath together. We were so in tune that for a moment, I didn't think my note was coming out of my instrument. And then so I crescendoed an imperceptible amount and I felt the resistance of my horn. I was like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, okay, I'm playing. And then in the texture of the piece, like I have to descend in quarter tones away from her and then lock into something and that she matches that tone. And we did that. And so when we made it to the end of that phrase, I was just thinking to myself, well, damn, we just nailed that. That was really beautiful. That was exactly how I would want that moment to go. And I had my eyes closed and I opened them and they just happened to fall on this couple sitting a few rows back from the stage. And his eyes were just wide.
Oh my God.
And he turns and looks at his significant other, and he just mouths right like, and I watch him do this. He mouths, "What the fuck?" And I was just like, "Yeah, that's exactly why you do it." Like that is the new music equivalent of
The lighter.
the crowd full of lighters,
Yeah.
right? That was the new music TM equivalent, right? If you're creating this gorgeous intimate moment and you get an audience member to mouth what the fuck, I was just like, that's it. I'm gonna put my horn away. I was like, this recital's over. It's done. It's
Job's
done.
done.
Job's done.
Oh my
I'm out of here.
God.
I'm donezo. Let's go.
It's amazing that you caught that too.
I can honestly say, like in hundreds, maybe thousands of performances I've given in the past, like 25 years plus of my life. That was a moment. That was a moment I replay in my brain anytime I'm having a shitty like practice day. I'll connect with that and be like, okay, well, there was that. You did that. Don't give up. Keep searching, keep reaching, keep wanting to improve, keep striving for that moment.
Yeah, see, and there's that discomfort you were talking about.
Discomfort, man, right? Like if you get comfortable with how you sound, All right. Well, you got to be uncomfortable. You got to be uncomfortable. You have to want that bit of discomfort, and it doesn't, another thing too, though, is that I think we also equate discomfort or struggle with suffering. And those are not the same thing. I want discomfort, but I don't want to suffer. And I think sometimes that's another bad thing in classical music we do too, right? Is that we're like, well, if I'm not suffering, I'm not making art.
That's
It's so stupid, but it's so easy to buy into.
Yeah.
It's so easy to buy into because so much of our culture, both inside of classical music and outside of classical music, talking about classical music, wants us to buy into that, right? Wants us to buy into this myth of practicing 10 hours a day, or this kind of black swan mentality. I mean, I know that film's about ballet, but let's be real, it could just as easily be about classical music.
Oh, totally,
this idea of beating yourself into extinction and then you achieve perfection in art. I really liked Aronofsky as a filmmaker, but also kind of fuck him for that movie because it's a really shallow depiction of what it means to create and what it takes to create. I'm a much bigger believer in what David Lynch said, that suffering gets in the way of creativity. If you're suffering and you're a creative, you are being creative in spite of that suffering, not because of it. Jimi Hendrix wasn't a legend on guitar because he was addicted to drugs. He was a legend on guitar despite the fact he was addicted
exactly, yeah.
Charlie Parker was a legend on saxophone, not because of heroin, but in spite of it. Right?
I love what you're saying right now because it's so accurate, it's so true. One thought I have as to the whole ideal of like the starving, suffering artist is it's a romanticized depiction, and which is why it actually, I would argue that it works well for a movie, is because it's romanticized, so it's like,
sure is,
so like it draws you in and you're like, oh my God, the emotional power behind that, but that, like you said, that's part of the problem, is like, especially when we're young students, which I'm sure you probably experience as a professor. Your students are like, oh, but I couldn't do that, or like, I don't have that pain, I'm not cutting my ear off, like.
Right, yeah, exactly. I saw both of my ears. How could I possibly be a great painter? Like, well, there were plenty of great painters who had both of their ears. Go forth.
One could argue that the majority of great painters had both ears.
I'm pretty sure statistically that is true, right? Yeah, it's just, but you're right. It's the stories about the painters with one ear that sell movies, that sell books, that capture the public imagination, right? Another one of my least favorite classical music tropes that happens in culture is classical music is something that sociopaths and psychopaths and villains listen to. That's one of my least favorite. And I don't know where it began, but I think I have yet to see a more compelling case before this. I think it starts with Silence of the Lambs.
Ooh, I could see that.
With Hannibal Lecter being a highly cultured, playing the aria from the Goldberg Variations serial killer, right? Yeah. And because I think ever since that movie, what was that, 89? I think 89, 90?
Yeah.
That's been a huge, like, trope in media, right? So much so, like, I've been going back and rewatching the Marvel Netflix series, right? And sure enough, well, we need a way to show that Wilson Fisk is the bad guy in Daredevil. So guess what? He's listening to classical
Mozart.
music. Yeah. It's like, and then, multiple series later, we're going to introduce Sigourney Weaver's character in The Defenders, and she's the biggest bad of them all.
Right.
Guess what? she's a classical music lover and supporter, and I'm like, okay, it's just become this incredible shorthand for people who are deranged psychopaths. And I think that comes from decades of classical music denying the body. Right? Classical music as a culture for decades has erected that barrier between artist and audience member. And so now I think culturally it's become shorthand for somebody who easily throws up an emotional barrier between themselves and a large group of people.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I mean, it's movies definitely are the biggest culprit for presenting specific tropes in society. Right. I would say. Like, I mean, maybe not the biggest, but I don't know. We all watch movies. Like Silence of the Lambs was one of the 3 films in history to have the 5 major Oscars.
The 5 major Oscars, right? And one of the few, I think maybe the only horror movie to win Best Picture. Am I wrong on that? There might be another. Maybe, I don't know. Let me.
Maybe certain thrillers, but I don't know. I don't know about horror exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of examples in film of classical music being presented as something. Oh, wait a second. Whoa. Okay, I have to go back even further than Silence of the Lambs, because Alex in A Clockwork Orange is a huge classical music fan, right? Okay, so that's a whole decade earlier. I'm gonna keep digging back, but like
I like that. Keep going through that process, please.
Yeah, just like move a decade back. But I really like the film Three Kings. The moment where George Clooney is just blasting, I think it's the Bach Mass in B minor. And he's just like hauling ass through the desert in this Jeep, blasting the Bach Mass in B minor. It's such a fucking badass moment.
I haven't seen that since it came out. I have to watch it.
It holds up. It is a wild fever dream of a movie, but I think it holds up. I dig it. Check it out again.
David O. Russell?
It sure is, man.
Okay.
It sure is. Far out.
I have no doubt that it's something special. I just remember there was a scene where like Ice Cube and who was the third guy?
Spike Jonze. The director.
Director?
Right? Yep.
Really?
No, wait. No, Mark Wahlberg was the third guy. Spike Jonze is the fourth guy, and he ends up getting shot and killed.
Okay.
But yeah, the director Spike Jonze, I believe, is the fourth of the Three Kings.
Oh, that's interesting.
but doesn't make it. Wink.
Right? Yeah, I mean the only thing I remember from that film, because I saw it when it came out in like 98, 99, whatever that was. Was I'm pretty sure Ice Cube and Mark Wahlberg were like fist fighting at some point. That's like the one thing I remember.
Okay, legit though, I would pay money to see Ice Cube and Mark Wahlberg fist fight in real life in the year of our Lord 2020.
That'd probably be a good fight.
Let's make that happen with George Clooney as the ref.
Oh my God.
We can make that happen. It could be sponsored by Casamigos, right?
I think George Clooney would be the most entertaining ref ever.
Oh, 100%. Easily the sexiest.
Yeah, well, without a doubt.
Right? Yeah, the ref would be the easiest on the eyes.
He's the definition of, what do they call a silver fox?
Silver fox, 100%, right? Man. 100%.
The definition.
The definition, 100%. Yeah, he is full-on Benjamin Button, right? Just getting younger and sexier the longer he ages. I'm sure there's a painting of him somewhere in an attic that looks fucking horrible.
Oh, yeah. That's funny, man. I like that.
Sure, it looks terrible.
He's the actual living example of Benjamin Button, which is right, funny. Yeah. That his pal Brad Pitt played Benjamin Button.
Yeah, right. Exactly right.
Danny Ocean and I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh yeah, Danny Ocean and Brad Pitt, who's kind of, Brad Pitt's character's name is Brad Pitt. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Brad Pitt as Brad Pitt, not himself. Brad Pitt as Brad Pitt.
Those are always good ones. My girlfriend was reading a thing from BuzzFeed yesterday that was top 20 actors who just play themselves or play the same roles, and it was like Jack Black and Zooey Deschanel always playing the quirky girl who sings.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
It was an entertaining little thing to kind of go through. I mean, I didn't agree with all of it, but it was still fun to read, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But hey, look, if you're Jack Black and you manage to become a Hollywood star, you ride that.
Oh
You
yeah,
ride that train as long as you can, and then like you get out and you put your right foot on the ground and you push that train even further once it comes to a right.
totally,
You just
totally, man.
stay on that track.
Well, this almost like makes me think back to the conversation we're having about people who hit it big when they're young
Yeah,
and they
man,
have that
that's
hit, and then it's like, what do I do from here? Do I ride this wave? It's like I think of Penderecki in the early '60s,
yeah,
and
for sure.
then come what was the early '70s when he just like
And then he's
boom,
like, yeah, never mind.
yeah,
Doing that anymore, right? I will incorporate passages like that. And that's really fascinating too. Again, with one of my classes, I was talking about that just today, where we were talking about a lot of these high modernists who made names for themselves in the 50s and 60s and into the early 70s. And then you revisit their music in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, and they really are doing different stuff. And I think that's something um, that I think a lot of music history and music theory classes at the collegiate level do a poor job of expressing, right? Because think of how many people hear Penderecki's Threnody
hmm
in a music history survey class, and then they go, okay, well, that's Penderecki. I got it. Right? I don't really dig that piece. I'm not going to listen to any more Penderecki. Or they listen to Boulez Le Marteau, and then they're like, okay, well, I've got Boulez now. I don't really dig that. I don't have to listen to any more Boulez. Um, or Ludoslawski, one of my favorite composers,
oh,
they listen
love
to
him.
Venetian Games, and then they go, oh, okay, well, that's, I guess it does what it does. I don't really have to listen to anything more. And then I'm like, okay, great. So now you're missing out on, Penderecki's later works. You're missing out on Boulez doing the orchestral version of his notations. You're missing out on Ludoslawski's Chantefleur Chantefable. You're missing out on, Ludoslawski's Partita for Violin and Orchestra, which is just one of the greatest little violin concertos in
Beautiful,
history.
beautiful.
And so, yeah, man, it happens a lot in music history and music theory classes, especially with post 45 music, where there's so much to get through, I think,
Yeah, yeah.
that it's like, okay, well, you're going to get one piece by a composer. And what's really unfortunate is that the pieces often chosen to represent those composers are their quote unquote breakout pieces, right?
Right.
So it's the shit that they were writing when they were like 26 or something, and then they have 50 more years of composing ahead of them, where sometimes they're writing music that's radically distant from the piece that became their quote unquote breakout hit.
Yeah.
And then so a whole generation of people going through these courses are like, oh no, I heard those works. I'm not really hip to them. It happens that way a lot with one of my personal favorite composers, Elliott Carter,
Mm.
right? Where you hear maybe the piano concerto or the double concerto from the 60s, or the third string quartet, and then people go, oh my gosh, this is just like the pinnacle of complexity, and I can't really get into it. I'm not going to listen to any Elliott Carter. And then they listen to some of Carter's music post 2000, when Carter was still kicking and still writing music.
Amazing.
Amazing music, and it's so light, it's so effervescent. So much of this density has been removed. It just floats in air. And then people go, wait a second, this is the same composer. And I go, oh, yeah, this is really incredible. You listen to, I think his string orchestra piece Sound Fields ends on a B flat major triad,
Yeah, yeah.
or with the sonority that contains that like a muddied B flat major triad. I think, I don't know. It's been a while since I've listened to that piece, but you compare that to something like the third string quartet or the duo for violin and piano or something, and it's just night and day.
Yeah.
But of course, what makes it into the anthology is one of Carter's works from the 60s or 70s. Never mind the fact he wrote 40 more years of music after that,
Mm.
in a really different vein. I think it does a serious injustice to so many of these composers.
It's oh man, that's so true. And I think this connects totally to what we were saying earlier about once again living in discomfort, because as a creative person, like to well not live in discomfort, but to be open to discomfort, because in my mind, and please, tell me your thoughts on this, but going into discomfort is also progress, because now you're stepping into it and you're growing, right?
Right. Right.
And yeah, no,
Yeah.
please go.
Yeah, no, no. I was just going to say, every time you go to the gym, that's discomfort.
Yeah.
Every time you go on a 5-mile run, that's discomfort. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm talking about. That's discomfort. Every time you go into the practice room to work on something that you haven't quite mastered, that's discomfort. And so I want to abolish this idea that comfort is a virtue and that discomfort is the bad guy.
Right.
Discomfort is where growth happens, right? When you're going through adolescence, you have growing pains. It's discomfort because your body is changing at this incredible rate. Imagine if you could hit the pause button on that and just be like, oh, ow, my knees hurt this morning because I'm 12 years old and my legs are literally growing overnight. Oh, that's uncomfortable. Hit pause. No, it's fine, Mom. I'll just be 4'2" forever.
Right.
And so, no disrespect to dudes out there who are 4'2". Yeah, I just picked that as an example. It's just that, yeah, discomfort is not the enemy. Complacency comfort is the enemy. And again, I'm not talking about roof over your head comfort. To me, that's not comfort. That's survival.
Right.
We need that needs to be addressed before anything. Roof over your head, food in your stomach, medicine if you need it. That's survival. That's not comfort. That's not what I'm talking about.
Totally.
It's the stuff that you elect to do that you don't need to do. Right? Nobody,
I like the way you worded that.
Nobody needs to write a piece of music. You don't need to do that. The world might not need that in a survival sense. You need to do it because human beings are meant to create things out of their discomfort, right? You go do something uncomfortable, you discover something, and then you want to share that with other human beings so that they might resonate with it, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the burdens of being a human being. You have stuff in your head, and you know that other human beings have stuff in your head, and you want to know how much of the stuff in your head maps onto the stuff in their head.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, I'm going to do something uncomfortable. I'm going to create something, plop it out into this society that I happen to engage in. And if folks raise their hands and say, yes, that's a thing that's in my head too, that's something I wished had been in existence, right, then that makes you feel good, right? So you plunge into the lake of discomfort and try to dredge up something that everybody can then eat from, right? And then that makes you feel good, makes you feel more connected to these other human animals. And I think that's why we do what we do, right? And so, it's funny where we go, oh, well, there's no need to create. Actually, there's a deep need to create. There's a deep need to see whether or not these other human animals that exist in this plane of reality with you vibe with what's going on inside your head.
Yeah, and I think too with the word create or being creative, I think a lot of people misconstrue that with what word am I trying to say? Equate that to being artistic. And right. I think that's inaccurate. I think that's wholly inaccurate.
100%. I'm the only professional musician in my immediate or extended family. Mm-hmm. And people go, wow, well, that's really remarkable then that you ended up being a creative person and you didn't come from a creative family. And I'm like, oh, no, hold on. I didn't say that, because my dad, for a side gig, learned how to build these beautiful fences and hardwood decks. Like, he never took a class in this. He never, went to school for carpentry or anything like that. he was just like, you know what? I really like building fences. I really like building decks. And so he built his own. And then some friends came over one time and they were like, wait, who built this for you? And he said, I did. And then they said, well, could you build mine? And then he actually ended up starting a business. And it just started because he wanted a deck or he wanted a fence to go around our backyard. And he said, no, I'll do it. I'll figure out how to do it. And then my mom gave birth to 3 kids. She maintains this beautiful, I'm talking Better Homes and Gardens level garden in her backyard. Hardly anybody sees it except for her.
Right.
That's creative energy. That's deeply creative energy. She just made my sister's wedding cake. It is gorgeous. It is beyond gorgeous. She never went to school for it, never took classes in it. She was just like, I'm going to learn how to make wedding cakes so I can make my daughters. And she did. And I mean, just this incredibly delicate, beautiful, like piping of these flowers that all looked identical going around the end. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful cake. My mom never went to school for that, never took classes for that, just wanted to learn how to do it and then learned how to do it.
Yeah.
That is creative energy. My dad building decks is creative energy. Raising chickens is creative energy. Writing a symphony is creative energy. It's all the same.
Right. Oh my God.
All the same, right?
Totally.
Wanting to have sex with your partner is creative energy.
Yes.
Painting the walls of your living room is creative energy. There's no need for that. You want to do it so that maybe, as I said, a friend comes over, they see the color that you chose, they vibe with it, and you feel a little less alone in this universe.
Totally, man. Oh my God.
Right? That's why we create shit.
I feel like this whole episode thus far has been dispelling what certain words mean, like, or disproving whatever, you know.
Right, absolutely.
Like the idea of what an artist is, the definition of creativity, you know, like living in discomfort, what that means.
Right, yeah, we're in it, man. We're in it. Pick another word. Fuck it. Let's try to blow up some more balloons or pop others.
Actually, I have one in mind that's
go for
ringing. So we're talking about creativity and the impetus behind that. And the word that keeps coming to my head is purpose.
Purpose.
What are your thoughts on I'm not even going to say anything else besides that word. What are your thoughts in that relating to this discussion?
I think purpose is something that's a little trickier to nail down. And I think our purpose sometimes isn't something that comes from inside us. I think sometimes purpose is something that emanates from that Jungian collective unconscious. I think purpose is something that might be one of those archetypes, where we try to decipher how we can be of most use to the greatest number of people possible. I think purpose is something that we establish thinking about our relationship to the multitude of people around us, both our nuclear family, the people we encounter every day, the people that we've never met. And so I think our purpose is asking ourselves, what is my position relative to all of these different groups of people who are various degrees of separation away from me, right? What is my purpose to the people who live under my roof? What is my purpose to my parents? What is my purpose to the people I see at least once a week? What is my purpose to the entire globe? And so I think when it comes to questions of purpose, we have to go through that process of individuation, of finding out who the true self is devoid of persona.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
That's where the purpose lies, right? And I think the more we recognize the difference between that which is our persona and that which is our ego, we come closer and closer to finding what purpose is.
So are you saying that with purpose separate from being creative, or is more of through your lived experience and gathering, like whatever events or opportunities you have throughout your life, and then recognizing at some point, like through your interaction with these people, like you said, your family, your friends, your peers, your colleagues, that at some point you gather a sense of what your purpose is. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think purpose is an extension of empathy. And I think people who are devoid of empathy have no purpose.
People who are devoid of empathy have no purpose.
Right.
Wow.
I think purpose comes from that stripping away of persona and how you interface with other people. That's what your purpose is. And if your purpose is something that seems inherently individual and selfish, I promise you, if it's your true purpose, you're still doing it for other people.
Right.
You're still doing it thinking about how you can connect with other people, right? How you can join that link, how you can form that chain with these other human creatures that are running around on this planet. And I think that's a function of empathy. Mm-hmm. I think that's also why people who are in the creative arts tend to like substances that increase their empathetic reaction. Mm. I think there's a reason why a lot of creative people enjoy psychedelic substances, because those substances enhance their ability to empathetically connect with others. And they go, right, that's my purpose, right? That's the whole reason I want to do this, right? I think that's why in the time of pandemic, so many creative artists mentally struggle so mightily, and rightfully so. They are missing that empathetic connection in the way that they've learned to establish it over years or decades of a career. That's hard. That's very hard, because that empathy generates their purpose.
Right.
Right. So rarely, I find, does a purpose come from within. It comes from without. The more in tune you are with your family, with your friends, with your community, with your nation, with your world, your purpose becomes pretty clear in a hurry. Your purpose becomes pretty clear in a hurry when you stop thinking about your own persona.
That's interesting. I like that a lot. I like thinking about that. What you're saying, it's more of an external, and
right.
less coming from yourself, and recognizing, your position and how you affect or impact people around you.
Right. Right. And I think a lack of empathy creates a lack of purpose. And then that lack of purpose leads to people feeling lost, people feeling angry. I think it also accounts for people's willingness to submit to authoritarian figures, because they lack empathy for those around them. They lack purpose. And if they lack purpose, then they try to fill that void with a purpose that is given to them by someone who wants to control them. And I think that's a serious, I want to choose my words carefully here. I think that's a serious cultural disease that we have to actively fight against. I think that's something that we have to be vigilant in generating. I think we need to generate empathy as much as possible as human beings, because from that empathy comes purpose, right? Anyway, just my 2 cents. I'm musing here.
No, no, I'm enjoying this
on a Wednesday night, a week after a major election. I'm musing about the nature of empathy and purpose.
But, yeah, I think it's completely necessary, and it's 100% welcome. I mean, I love that you're getting so deep into this and pursuing this sort of like what is exactly the definition of purpose and everything.
Right. Well, and I also think a lot about how empathy leading to purpose is also connected to the strange attractor, right? The idea that history isn't generated by what's happened in the past, but by some unspecified, unknown event in the future, right? We think of history as backward looking, when in fact, history might be something that is dictated from an event in the future, right? The strange attractor, that which pulls us forward. And I think the closer we come to empathizing with a maximum number of human beings and also with our environment as a whole, the more we empathize with the totality of what we are sharing in our experience on this planet, the clearer our purpose becomes, the clearer that end point in the future that is pulling history toward it becomes. We don't know what that moment is. What Ray Kurzweil described it as the singularity, right? That moment of fusing of human consciousness with machines that might then connect human consciousness around the globe. Now I'm really kind of off in the deep end, but I think there's something to that.
That's an interesting path for sure. I mean, I wonder how much of that is reflected in our use of social media and stuff.
Well, right. I mean, and that's something that, any Star Trek fan will tell you, that maybe the strange attractor is some unknown event in the future that reconnects all human beings around the globe as a single tribe again. Right? That's the central premise behind Star Trek as a universe, right? Is that human beings realize we are not alone. That's the strange attractor in the future. And from that point forward, we get our shit together.
Right.
I hope that's the case.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, right? That will be the moment where we come back to recognizing the global tribe. I don't use that word lightly. Perhaps I should say the global unit, the global being of a collective human consciousness. That we will have that moment where we recognize in each other that we're all just, there's this life force, there's this energy in which all of us are just these little tendrils poking out for, heaven willing 70, 80 or so years, and then bloop, we just disappear right back into it.
Yeah.
And so the more we recognize that we're all just these little tendrils shooting up from this giant reservoir of humanity, the better off we are. And so empathy, recognizing that your tendril and my tendril are actually from the same source, that gives us a purpose to want to rejoin and reconnect with that larger reservoir. And I think that connects to what we do as creative artists, right? Is we are empathy generators. That's what we do.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's very accurate especially with composing. I mean,
right.
We write this music because we want to, it's like film, we want to elicit an emotional response.
Yes.
And which I think is what art is in general. It's like it's eliciting an intellectual and emotional response.
Right. Yes. And that's the thing too. To me, my favorite works of art, my favorite pieces of music, whatever you want to think about it, manages to elicit the emotional the intellectual, the spiritual, the physical response, all of those responses, right? Those different types of responses, because if you manage to do that and you recognize in some other human being that they derive those same responses too, again, it's that, hey, wait, yeah, you're a tendril, I'm a tendril, we're tendrils together, we're cool, this is good, right? So that creative impulse is an empathy generator, which leads to purpose, which connects us to that human reservoir. And so I think that's why the creative impulse is so universal, right? It doesn't matter where we go. We're all seeking to want to connect with one another and say, hey, wait a second, we're all tendrils, right? We're all tendrils from that same reservoir. Doesn't matter, right? You know, it is astonishing to me that I can listen to a piece of music written by a Lutheran in Germany in 1720, and it moves me to tears.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. It blows my mind that I can listen to Indonesian gamelan and my brain just feels like it's on fire.
Yeah.
That's incredible. It's that recognizing of that mutual tendril quality that we have.
It's amazing to reference, you know, like Bach or anyone from so far removed in space and time. To think about, like, at some point, whenever he wrote that piece, like, he had to take whatever he used to write with, I don't know what the hell he used, and put that on a piece of paper to create the score. And then here we are in 2020, and we listen to that, and it moves us emotionally.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing.
It's unbelievable.
Right? You want to talk about time travel.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. You can listen to a piece by Hildegard von Bingen from almost a millennium ago.
Yeah.
And go, wait a second. All right. This has it going on. I love it. That's gorgeous. Thank you for sharing that gift. 1,000 years into the future.
Yeah.
What the actual fuck, Adam?
I know.
Blows my mind. And she wasn't thinking on those time scales. I don't think any human being can. I think you can feel on those time scales, though. Mm-hmm. You can't conceive of it. You can only hope to connect with the community and the specific culture around you. And then if it happens to resonate down the temporal path, then, you know, congratulations.
Yeah.
You know, but even then, that's not a requirement for it to have been great art. You know, I think sometimes we make that mistake of saying, oh, great art is that which is universal and timeless.
Right.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
If great art moves 20,000 people to tears one time and one time only in one place, I don't know, man. I still think that's pretty great.
That is insanely great. I mean,
it's insanely great.
It makes me, I think about when I used to play, I mentioned earlier, I was really into punk rock. And so, like, for like 8 or 10 years, I played in a punk band. And there was this one show we had at this bar, not far, like 10 minutes from where I lived, right? So everyone I knew was there. There had to have been like maybe 40 people. It wasn't a crazy amount, right? But the bar was small enough to where it was filled.
Yeah.
Everyone was singing along. Everyone was dancing. Right. And like that experience of the music that me and my band wrote will never happen again.
Yeah.
But in that one moment, with us and those 40 people, however many there were, it was a powerful experience. And I like you said earlier with you and Megan performing, and you hit that note and it's perfectly in tune, you know. Like,
right.
And you never forget that.
Do you ever think about, you know, you ever wonder if there were people who are strangers to you who were in that bar that night, who right now might be talking with someone like, oh man, there was this band I heard and it was such a great night. You ever think about that? Pretty incredible.
It is incredible, but it actually makes me think of something completely related, which is one time my band played a show in Trenton, New Jersey, which is the state capital, right?
Right.
Trenton is like central Jersey. I lived in northwestern New Jersey, kind of like a half hour from the Pennsylvania border, an hour from the upstate New York border, right?
Okay.
Right in the Appalachian Mountains, basically.
Yeah.
So Trenton was like an hour and a half from where I lived. And we played this show there. It was a great show. And there was this band, these dudes who were like maybe in their early 40s, mid 40s. And they were like, yeah, we're from Lake Hopakon. And that's the town I was from. And I'm like, well, I've never heard of these guys. And so I went up to the singer afterward and I was like, dude, you guys are from Hopakon? So am I. And he's like, oh, not us, our bass player. And I was like, oh. And so I went to talk to him. I'm like, hey, man, you're from Hopakon? He's like, yeah, I just moved there. And I was like, oh, no shit. Where'd you move? And he's like, oh, I live on Jefferson Trail. And I'm like, dude, that's right around the corner from my house. And I was like, what house did you move into? And he's like, oh, I moved into 28 Jefferson Trail. And I'm like, dude, that was my best friend's house who literally just moved out of there.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Incredible. Right?
And to further, like, you know, the beauty of this story, when my buddy's dad was selling that house, this is when we were like 20, 21 years old. When my buddy's dad was selling that house, I don't know if are you familiar with the Misfits, the punk band?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they're the Crimson Skull. They're like iconic. Yeah. My buddy painted the Crimson Skull on the basement door in their house. And his dad, when he was trying to like make the house look nice when they were selling it, he's like, you got to get rid of that because it's not going to sell.
Right.
The dude who bought the house said he bought it because of that.
Yes. That is fantastic.
So, I mean, it relates in a sense, you know, with what with your question about like, you know, experiencing something with someone else completely disconnected as a stranger, and like, in some way it relates, I guess. But
yeah, no, absolutely it does. There was a creative expression that some other human being witnessed and said, "This is the house I'm going to buy because of that."
Right.
Yeah, that's part of that beautiful cosmic clockwork that I don't think we've come close to understanding as human beings. But you know, we keep trying.
It's a tricky thing, I think, especially. I mean, and this isn't even a bad thing either, but just the reality of it is everyone is their own person, right? Like we're each, like everyone's an individual who has certain interests and personality traits and like certain experiences in their life that when they listen to a piece of music, it filters through that experience, you know?
Right.
So no one's ever going to have the same reaction to like the same piece of music, where like if I listen to Bach's BWV 82,
right.
I can't remember the name of the cantata, but like that just like hits me. I'm like, oh my God. Ooh, this is the most powerful thing. Like,
right.
But I have no doubt that like any other person who doesn't listen to classical music at all might listen to it and be like, okay.
Yeah, you know? Exactly right. Well, you know, going back to what you were talking about, how like everybody is their own person. I think, yes, there's something to be said for the individual perspective that every human being can bring, but then again, also recognizing that your consciousness is something that is inherently limited, and that may not, in fact, be entirely your own. You know, a really great Terence McKenna quote where he said, "I don't believe consciousness is generated in the brain any more than television programs are made inside my TV. The box is too small." Right. And that's such an incredible quote. And I, you know, thinking about that quote, that's, you know, think about the fact that human consciousness might not, in fact, be the kind of individualistic window that we like to imagine it is. And that, you know, if others don't share the perspective that we do, that's okay.
Right.
You know, I think, in fact, recognizing that your consciousness might be that tiny TV actually helps you empathize with people whose perspective is different than yours. Because then you could just be like, oh, well, their tiny TV picks up different radio or picks up different TV stations.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
So because if you think of your individual thoughts as something that are so precious, then it's easier to become defensive when somebody else doesn't see things that way.
Yeah.
But if you think of it as just like, no, these just happen to be the thoughts these thoughts are things that happen to be just the channels that my particular tiny 4-inch TV picks up, right? And if your tiny 4-inch TV picks up a completely different set of channels, that doesn't mean that your TV doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, so this sort of makes me think about going back to the suffering artist thing is like, because the art we create, what we create, regardless if it's art, it makes us vulnerable because we just put something out there that was like, here's something that I believe in. And when people say no, it's like, you retreat, like.
Well, exactly right. And then it's helpful to think that if you put out a broadcast and somebody didn't watch it, maybe their TV literally just couldn't even pick it up.
Right.
Or maybe if their TV did pick it up, they were really invested in a different channel at the same time. All of those situations are okay. That doesn't make your broadcast bad. And so, the answer isn't, well, if I only suffered harder, maybe their TV would have picked it up and they would have tuned in.
Right.
No, you just have to accept that it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's not a reflection on your moral character. It's fine. It's fine. You're doing okay and you're okay. And so I think if we are empathetic to others, we recognize that their TVs just might pick up different channels than ours. And if you're not empathetic, then you go, well, this person's TV is broken. I should probably smash it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. They're still running on tubes and,
Yeah.
Black and white.
Exactly. And so I think our task as all human beings is to expand in any way we can the number of channels our TV picks up. We are born with one channel and it broadcasts snow, right? It's one channel and it's static, right? And then eventually that one channel just becomes the face of our parents, right? And then as we get older, we learn to slowly turn the knobs in different ways. And if I turn this knob this way and this knob this way and adjust the antenna this way, I pick up a station that's actually pretty far from here. But that's pretty cool. I want to see what's going on over there. So I think as we evolve as human beings, we try to find more and more ways of picking up more channels and broadcasting what we're doing to more and more people, right? And then I think a problem occurs when you have a society, that's stuck on 3 channels from the 1960s, and they get really upset when so many other people have done the hard work of increasing the number of channels that they get, and they think they're entitled to that same amount of channels despite having not done the work, and they get mad, they get jealous. Well, I have to smash that person's TV because that person picks up 500 channels and I only pick up 3. So rather than expanding the number of channels that I have by 497, I'm just going to break their fucking TV and that'll show them. We'll make TV great again.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's on its path.
It's on its path. I think it is. I think it is, genuinely. I think we are going through growing pains as a species.
Yeah.
That's hard. And that's hard to admit. We've been here so little time. Rewind time just a couple of thousand years, which in the cosmic span of things is a blink of an eye. We, like, despite all of our pretensions, we are apes that have figured out cell phones. Congratulations. We have so much more spiritual progress to do. So much more. And it might take time on a scale that makes us really uncomfortable to think about.
Yeah, well, one thing that I think is an interesting perspective to have, which relates to this, is I don't know how accurate this is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is supposedly, like, even talking about, like, you're talking about our place in history and the universe, right? But even looking at the history of humankind, is that the amount of people who are living in this current moment is supposedly less than 8% ever.
Right.
Like the amount of people who have ever been alive and who are dead now.
Right.
The people who are alive now, it only makes like 7% of that or something.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible when you think about, again, the ancestors that have come before us. And that we will never know. But again, I think in a very real way, we are still connected to through that collective unconscious, right? The myths that we create are not fundamentally different than the myths that they created thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Right? It's so funny because like we see how absolutely ubiquitous and popular superhero movies have become. That's not anything new.
Right.
That's not anything new. How is, what is fundamentally different about a culture that heavily invested in seeing the further adventures of Luke Skywalker from a culture heavily invested in knowing what happens next to Odysseus?
Lightsabers. That's about
Lightsabers, maybe. Although I would argue that maybe Homer's Odyssey could benefit from the use of lightsabers.
There's a lot to be hopeful there. There's like...
a new hope.
Yeah, a new
right. Right. No, I mean, but again, if you think about it, we are only 5,300 years removed from thinking, hey, wow, you know what's a really killer idea? Bronze.
Oh yeah.
That's only 5,000 years ago that we're like, wow, we are cutting edge motherfuckers. Check this out. Bronze, we've got it. Wrap it up. We're done here. Dust the hands off. We're like, we crushed it. We crushed it. We have no idea what logic and reason are. Haven't figured out science. We have no idea. Like, this predates monotheistic religion.
Yeah.
We've got bronze. Wrap it up. We've crushed it. Right.
Pour the scotch. We're good.
Pour the scotch. We're good. Nailed it. Right. Write the letter home to mom. Bronze is it. Go all in on bronze. It's the Bitcoin of 3300 BC.
I love that.
Right? And so here we are in 2020, only 5,000 years later, 5,000 and change. And, we're like, oh, well, gee whiz, we still haven't figured out this and this and this and this and this. Well, hey, maybe we should take it easy on ourselves, okay? Like, we're getting there. Progress might just be a little slower than what we want it to be. It is a little dangerous that we're kind of like fucking up the planet in a way that isn't going to be very germane to the existence of the human species. Maybe we want to work against that. Again, maybe we should be thinking about the well-being of other people before we try to put a Mercedes in every garage. And so I think we need a radical reprioritization of how we regard other human beings as tendrils of a collective human consciousness. And I do think that art making plays a critical role in that. I think it is needed. I think it is necessary. I think it's fundamental to the idea of our survival as a species that we continue to create stuff.
Sure.
Because in creating stuff, in sharing it, in understanding that other human beings see and understand what we might see and understand, that maybe we'll come closer to that idealized, continuous, empathetic state that human beings, I believe, should strive for.
I like that. Oh,
And that's as close as I'm going to come to a thesis statement tonight, I believe.
well, I think that's a great one.
I think that's it. I think that's it. That's as close as I'm going to come with 2 fingers of scotch on a Wednesday night to putting forth my personal philosophy.
What is something that you would like to see in the most immediate future in regards toward this thesis? Like immediate future. So let's make that like, I don't know, a year.
I think a great first step would be for everyone to get stoned.
I was not expecting that. I gotta be honest. I was not expecting that.
I think that would be a great first step.
So basically letting loose, freeing the mind, like.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's just take a step back and let's just appreciate that we're here.
Yes. If drugs were absolutely legal and I were a billionaire, I would absolutely send 10 tabs of acid to every citizen in the United States.
There you go.
I
think that's a solution.
Yes, I think everybody simultaneously ingesting 5 grams of dried psilocybin mushrooms would radically alter the state of human consciousness in a fundamentally positive way.
Now, are you familiar?
You weren't expecting this shit from me tonight, were you?
No, not at all.
Though.
I love everything. I wasn't expecting any of this conversation, and I mean that in a good way too.
Perfect, great. I'm gonna pour more scotch while we're at it.
Please, I'm actually at that point too. Do you follow the comedian Bill Burr?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
This makes me think of his bit that he said a few times, which I particularly enjoy, which is a certain amount of the percentage of the population has to be eliminated, right?
that is such a Bill Burr line.
So my thought, maybe this is me being cynical, in sending 10 tablets of acid to every person in the world,
right,
something bad is going to happen to a certain select few people. Would you adopt that Bill Burr mindset where it's like, all right, well, someone needs to be eliminated?
Well, I mean, at least they might go happy. But actually, I don't think it would. I think a lot of people would just stop and recognize how malleable time is, how much time they actually have, and the embarrassing wealth of resources that we all have available to us.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I have to completely piggyback on that. Like my the cell phone, the smartphone. The smartphone, yep. I think is the most undeniably just useful resource that we have.
Yes, it is.
And I think anyone who has one, which most people do, has potential.
Yes.
For whatever. And obviously there are obstacles and certain barriers that certain people experience in certain ways, but having that, you have literally almost the world.
Yes,
your disposal,
absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, this is a vulgar metaphor, but I like to think of cell phones as technological masturbation.
Oh, yeah.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's absolutely healthy. It could be so positive. It could be such a tool for discovering who you are and what you need and what you want. Mm-hmm. If you spend all of your time doing it, you might miss out on some things.
Right.
And so it's like any other technology. It is morally neutral. And I feel the same way about psychedelic substances. They are morally neutral. It is a technology. It is a technology that we can use to expand our sphere of consciousness. And if we use them in an enlightened and sensitive and careful way, I think the benefits can be extraordinary. It's they say there's a war on drugs, and yet there's a drugstore on every corner. We don't like to think of the fact that any civilization makes decisions about, any culture makes decisions about its drugs. There are drugs that it accepts, and then there are drugs that it forbids. And the United States is absolutely a drug culture, like so many other cultures around the world. It just so happens that our drugs are caffeine, alcohol, and meat. Those are our drugs. In fact, so many unions have prescribed drug breaks in the form of the coffee break. We don't bat an eye about that. Oh my gosh, don't talk to me until I've had my coffee in the morning. We are ingesting a drug, caffeine. That's totally fine. You and I sit here and we drink scotch. It's fine. That is an approved drug.
Right.
But then there are other drugs that we forbid. And so any culture can oddly enough be defined by the drugs it forbids and the drugs it permits. And so, I think it's interesting to note that the drugs that the United States tends to forbid, a lot of them are substances that are recognized in so many other parts of the world as expanding consciousness. That's interesting. That's really peculiar. And what's unfortunate is that our language is really limited. We use the word drug to talk about aspirin, psilocybin mushrooms, and crack.
Right. Yeah, it's an umbrella sort of term.
That's an umbrella sort of term. Consider the nuance of language that we apply to so many other aspects of our existence, and yet when it comes to these substances, they fall under the umbrella drug. And I think that does us a grave disservice as we seek to progress as human consciousness growers, as we seek to expand who it is that we think we are and how we relate to other human beings, so I think there's a reckoning coming, and obviously the war on drugs started as a racist ploy to disenfranchise people of color in the United States, and frankly it's continued that way over the past 50 years. Consider how many people of color in the state of Florida alone who are not allowed to vote in the 2020 presidential election because of felony drug charges. That's a little political soapbox of mine. But I truly believe that, again, we think of, in the United States, we go to intoxicants that are permitted. And so we think about ingesting alcohol before we play a big band gig. We think about ingesting alcohol before we sit down to work on a string quartet we're composing. We think nothing of that. And yet somebody's daring to suggest that we ingest a few grams of dried psilocybin mushrooms to possibly expand one's consciousness and one's sense of empathy with other human beings before engaging in creative arts is a bit verboten. I find that peculiar.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic for sure.
But I love the fact that you're like, holy shit, how did we get here in this conversation? Where do I even steer this on this podcast episode? Yeah. fuck, I should not. It was like, can I go back to talking to Megan now?
No, I love where this is going. I mean, everything that we're talking about, it's
and you can edit, like, if you want to, man, you can edit out this whole section.
Not at all.
Like,
No,
all
no,
right, okay.
no.
If you want to, that's cool. I wouldn't mind it. I'm just saying that. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to. I mean, whatever. That's up to you, honestly. Whatever you feel comfortable with. I don't want to put anything out there that you're reluctant to have the masses absolutely. Or your employer or anyone, whatever, you know.
Yeah, no, that's it's, as I said, I think I'm trying to be in 2020 far more honest about who I am, and what I believe and the things that I vibe with. We can move the conversation a little bit over and say that one of the things that I've been really enjoying is, some really purposeful meditation every single morning, meditation every afternoon. The other day I spent 45 minutes staring at a candle, and when I got done with it, I felt like I slept for 8 hours.
Holy shit.
It was incredible. I stared at a candle for 45 minutes. It was incredible.
How do you get to that point?
I just did it. I wanted to do it. There was no build up to that. I woke up that morning and I said, this afternoon I'm going to stare at a candle for 45 minutes, and then I did it.
I love that directness and like, I don't even know what the word is. Just like, yeah, I'm going to do this thing now. And then
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. Yeah. And it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable.
There it is.
It was fun. it was fun or funny or peculiar for about 5 minutes. I set a timer and I said, okay, I'm going to stare at this candle until the timer goes off. And I think for about the first 5 minutes, it was fun. Mm-hmm. And then around minute 10, I got antsy, like really antsy and uncomfortable. And then by minute 15, I was kind of in hell. I wanted nothing more than to stop. But I kept going. And
Why?
By the end of it, for the same reason that I'm not a runner, but my brother is. And, you get to a point in any race when you want to stop running. Every molecule of your body is telling you, what are you doing, you fucking idiot? Why are you running 26 miles? And then the joy comes from telling every molecule in your body to shut up. Mm-hmm. It's that exercise of will and intent. That is what's powerful. And then I got to a point where I stopped wanting something to happen. I stopped wanting to push thoughts out of my head, and I just let thoughts happen. When the timer went off, I closed my eyes, and when I did, I saw the candle still burning behind my eyelids. I could see it still moving, and I just sat with that for a couple of minutes. And I realized that energy that I watched intensely for 45 minutes is now reflected in my own consciousness. And I went about the rest of my evening truly feeling on cloud nine. It was an absolute, I felt like I had just had 4 cocktails at the best party I'd ever attended in my life. And I achieved that simply by looking at a candle for 45 minutes. And I also, in that experience, came further to the truth that time is far more expansive than what we think it is. We can achieve so much in 45 minutes. We can accomplish so much in 45 minutes. We can introspect so much in 45 minutes that oftentimes we go, oh my God, today's just so busy. I don't have the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's fucking nonsense. We have nothing but time. It's like, oh, life is short. No, life is long. Life is really long. We have so much time in life. And that comes back to, what Henry Rollins said about time, where he's like, as human beings, we are uncomfortable with the idea of sitting through time. And so we break time up into different kinds of time to deal with that anxiety, right? There's breakfast time, there's work time, there's rest time, there's family time, there's nap time, there's bedtime, there's dinner time, there's feed the dog time, there's go for a walk time. That's not real.
Yeah.
There's just time. If you want to be working on a string quartet at 3 a.m., great. If you want to be sleeping at noon, great. If you want to eat Cocoa Puffs at 10 p.m., great. No one's going to stop you. You can do that, right? If you want to call a friend that you haven't talked to in 20 years, you can literally do it this moment. There's nothing but time. Right. It's so expansive.
I love what you're saying right now. This is great. This is
right. And staring at that candle for 45 minutes helped me reconnect with that notion. And it's really powerful. I think we fall into a trap of believing that time is limited because we are constantly smacked in the front of our fucking brains with dopamine hits. Mm-hmm. We are so addicted to that nonstop, every 4-second dopamine hit, and that fucks up our perception of how much time we have.
Yeah.
It absolutely annihilates our perception of time. We think of stretching time or perceiving a stretched time as being unreality because time is so fleeting. I think it's exactly the opposite. I think this idea that time is compressed, I think that is the false reality. I think time is really long. And you experience that, like, take 48 hours and go out into the middle of the woods, leave all technology, sit in a tent for 48 hours, you will truly discover just how long 2 days can be.
Sure. Oh, totally.
It's long.
Totally. Yeah, I saw this study. It took place in like the 70s, I think. And they took this group of older men, like in their 60s or so, and they all lived within like the same community. And they brought them to they did this experiment for like, I think it was 2 weeks or maybe a little longer. And this experiment was these men live in this house together, but everything in that house was items and clothes that they wore when they were 20.
Woo!
And so through that whole experience of being there for 2 weeks, they changed by the time they came out, and they actually looked younger.
Wow.
Yeah.
Set and setting right there.
Right. And yes. and like you mentioning the whole thing about like going into the woods and doing something, being in a cabin for or whatever, and for 2 days, separate from everything else. It's like you actually experience that. No, time is it's like endless.
Right. And the thing of it is like it doesn't require, pulling a Walden in order to realize that. Take a look at your daily life, take a look at your schedule, take a look at your surroundings, and see if you can calibrate them, even in small ways, to amplify the amount of time you perceive you have, right? Sleep with your cell phone in a different room.
Yes. Yes.
Do that. I did not do that for years. That was a terrible mistake. Sleep with your cell phone in a completely different room. When you wake up in the morning, take 15 minutes to stare at the ceiling and take deep breaths. Forget 15 minutes. Do it for 10. Mm-hmm. Set your alarm for 10 minutes earlier than when you quote unquote need to wake up. And when it goes off, instead of like, hit the snooze, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of closing your eyes and rolling up in the covers again, open your eyes, stare at a point in the ceiling, and take massive breaths in and massive breaths out. Do that for 10 minutes. See if your day doesn't unfold in a radically different way than it has previously. I guarantee it will.
I'm doing that tomorrow. I'm literally going to do that.
Do it. 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Write this
Point
down
at the ceiling and just take a breath in and a breath out. It reminds me of So the simplest meditation in the world is breath goes in, breath goes out. That's it. That's the easiest meditation in the world. A lot of people think of meditation as a thing where it's like, oh, I have to clear my mind. No, you don't. Actually, meditation is not a process of clearing your mind. It's creating the space to recognize the thoughts that are entering your mind.
Right.
Meditation is the process of recognizing that you and your thoughts are not the same thing, right? That you are an observer. You are not your thoughts. You are the entity that perceives these thoughts coming in. That's all meditation does. That's all meditation reminds you of. So when you're focusing on your breath coming in and your breath going out, you focus on having that one click of removal between who you are and what your thoughts are. You know, and I've talked to people who say, oh, I've tried meditation, I'm just not good at it. Saying you're not good at meditation is like saying you're not good at peeing.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Like, did you do it? Well, then congratulations.
Yeah.
You're great. I guarantee you, everybody listening to this podcast right now is an excellent peer. Right?
Yeah.
You just allow it to happen.
Unless it comes out your neck.
Unless it comes out your neck, in which case,
something's
see a doctor.
off.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And so nobody is bad at meditation. The easiest meditation to do is breath goes in, you recognize it, breath goes out, meditation. Is an argument you just had with a family member screaming inside your head? That's okay. You're still meditating. You're taking a moment to recognize a breath going in and a breath going out. Because fundamentally, you are even subconsciously recognizing the transitory nature of all things.
Totally. I love that.
And that's what you're doing by simply breath goes in, breath goes out. It's a 6-word meditation. It's so simple, but in doing so, you are acknowledging the transitory nature of all things. And so if you start your day with 10 minutes of breath goes in, breath goes out, you kickstart your day. You turn the ignition on the vehicle that is your daily experience with recognizing the transitory nature of all things. So later in the day, when something pisses you off, you go, breath goes in, breath goes out. It's going to pass. It's going to be fine. Or when you experience a particular joy, you pay more attention to it because you go, breath goes in. Yeah, breath goes out. This too will evaporate, right? So I better pay attention to it. It becomes so much easier to dismiss the negative and to relish the positive when you start every single day with breath goes in, breath goes out. Acknowledging the transitory nature.
Yeah, and that's I had a conversation about this on a previous podcast where, like, it's too easy for us to wallow, or is that the word, wallow?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the negative, you know?
Right.
And going to what you said about sleeping with your phone in the other room and like waking up, it's like waking up and instantly looking at your phone is probably the worst way to start your day.
It is, apart from someone punching you in the face.
or your house being on fire.
Exactly. Or waking up in the middle of the night because you're being robbed.
Oh, yeah.
The worst way of waking up. It truly is. And the reason for it is that consider, and this, like, I had an alarm on my phone for many years. That's how I woke up. But here's the problem. The second you wake up to an alarm on your phone and you turn it off, guess what? Your phone is already in your hand. You are just a swipe away from checking those notifications, from looking at that email, from looking to see who texted you for some bizarre reason at 4 a.m. And now you are training your mind. Your consciousness has been online for 3 seconds, and you are setting it in motion for the rest of your conscious experience for the rest of your day to desire dopamine hits constantly.
Totally.
This destroys your sense of how much time you have. It truly does. And so when you put it in a separate room, your sense of how much time you have is so expansive. When you take 10 minutes to do a breathing meditation to start your day instead of looking at your phone, how much time you perceive you have from that point until the time you go to sleep again that night is fundamentally 180 degrees the opposite of your experience from looking at your phone immediately.
You just laid it out, man.
I just laid it out.
I want to share that clip right there.
Do it, babe.
With
Do it.
everyone and be like, you need to be, you know, I mean, there's so much more that you've said that is also brilliant. And
no, that's okay. Like
clip.
This has been a 2-hour conversation. Like really? The tagline for yes. See, time is expansive. Take that moment and make that the teaser, right? When you post on social media, I guess. But like it's absolutely true. And then what ends up happening is that when you recognize that time is far more expansive than what we think it is, then you go, and this goes to one of the questions that you emailed me where you're like, oh yeah, I'd like to chat about this. You know, balancing all these different things that I do in my career, you recognize the fact where you go, oh, I have 20 minutes. I can totally work on this part of this piece I'm working on. Yeah. Oh, I have 15 minutes. That's enough time for me to wet a reed and get a warm up in for the day.
So is that how you operate?
A lot of the times, yeah. Yeah. And another part of it too is that when you recognize how precious and expansive time is, you tend to not tolerate the bullshit that other people will try to foist upon.
Yes, thank you.
You will tend to deny that, even, and it doesn't have to be in an ugly way. It could be incredibly politely, right? I think what ends up happening, I was thinking about this just earlier on today, is that there's a certain amount of nonsense that the world will throw at you just naturally, and that's going to happen. And by the world and existence, I mean there's a certain amount of a flat tire, an illness, a death in the family. Like there's a certain amount of that will happen that is chaotic and random and it's unexplained. We cannot account for it. That there's going to be a percentage of that in your life. Fine. And so that's the discomfort that existence will throw at you. And I think what happens is mistakenly, people will go, well, there's a certain amount of discomfort that existence will throw at me. Why would I possibly want to put more discomfort on myself? So I'm going to put that discomfort level at 0. I'm going to put the discomfort level that I put on myself at 0%. And I think that's a mistake. And it's a reaction, right? And so what ends up happening is, let's say you have 100% discomfort that the human psyche can allow, right? That the human soul can allow. And existence throws 40% at you. 40% of your total discomfort is just shit that will happen, right? I think I think in response to that, people see that they're like, wow, 40, like I'm getting all of this crap in my life and it's chaotic and it's unpredictable. I'm going to minimize the amount of discomfort I bring into my own life. That doesn't bring that 40% down at all. What it does is it allows the discomfort that other people will put on you and sets that at 60%.
It amplifies it.
It amplifies it.
Yep.
But if you put your own discomfort level at 30%, at 40%, at 50%, the amount of discomfort you allow other people to bring into your life goes down.
So true.
The amount that existence throws at you will remain invariant. You're right. You cannot change that. Mm-hmm. But if you willfully engage in creating your own discomfort, the thing that goes down is the amount of discomfort you tolerate from other people bringing into your life. You expend a lot less energy worrying about that argument that you just had with a sibling when you're like, well, I got 90 minutes of practice I have to put in today.
Yeah.
When a coworker asks you to do their job for you, or when a coworker asks you to do their job for them, it's a lot easier to tell them no when you go, sorry, on Saturday, I already have a 5-mile run planned.
Right. Yeah.
So in increasing the discomfort that you elect, what you're actually minimizing is the discomfort that you allow other people to bring into your life. And the discomfort that existence will throw at you, even though that remains invariant, you will feel more confident in battling. Because you're like, I bring 40% of discomfort into my life on a regular basis just because of me, just because I want to. Oh, flat tire? Screw it. I can figure that out.
Yeah. I fucking got it.
I got it. Oh, I just got sick and it took me out for 10 days and I'm behind at work. Screw it. I got it.
Yeah. Let me write a symphony.
Yeah. I just finished writing a symphony and performing a recital and planting a garden in my backyard. Fine. Screw it. I got a flat tire.
What I love is you're pointing out that by spending time in discomfort, you actually become impervious to it.
Yes.
When it's like someone else bringing it on to you.
Absolutely. And that's why I think pulling this whole conversation full circle to almost 2 hours ago, I think that's why minimizing our personal discomfort is a horrible mistake.
It's
a horrible mistake for so many reasons. Mm-hmm. For so many reasons, right?
Yeah.
It disempowers us. Like the amount of bullshit that my brother tolerates in his life is at a staggering minimum. This is a guy who runs 33 miles at a stretch.
God.
And he works a full job. Like he gets up early, goes and works a full job, will run double digits miles every single day. He has a wife, a house, a yard, a 6-year-old, and he crushes it.
Hell yeah.
He crushes it.
Your brother's the man.
My brother is the man, and he manages to make that happen, I think, because he elects to bring discomfort into his life.
Dude, I love that, man. I love that. Even that wording, like elects to bring, like it also makes it, to me, I'm also hearing like being selective about the discomfort you're allowing to bring.
Absolutely.
Life,
Absolutely. Because again, discomfort is not suffering, mm-hmm. right? When we suffer, we are experiencing pain that is inescapable and not of our own volition. Mm. And I think confusing struggle with suffering is a big mistake. Suffering exists in the world. It's something, it's part of the human condition. Like we will all encounter suffering. The question is, how much of that suffering will we... Wait, I want to be very careful how I say this. We can confuse what we elect in our lives as suffering with actual suffering.
So I want to try to distinguish it, if you don't mind. Like,
sure.
Distinguish suffering from discomfort. Like, how would you define suffering?
Again, to me, suffering is something, and maybe that's what I refer to as the 40% of existential discomfort, right? Suffering is something that threatens our survival in a way that we did not choose. So suffering might be a catastrophic illness. We did not choose that. That is not something that we elected, and it brings us great pain. A death of a loved one is suffering. We did not elect that. We did not choose that. That is pain. And so I think it's a big mistake to say, oh, I suffer for my art. Well, actually, then you're bringing that on, man.
Yeah.
Or woman or non-binary person. You're choosing that then.
Right. Right.
And if you're choosing to suffer, that's on you.
Right.
For that, right? There's plenty that we as human beings, as part of our existence, will suffer with. That's a part of living. So in what we choose to do, if we veer that towards suffering, I think that's a big mistake.
I think it's dangerous too.
It's so dangerous. It's dangerous to our mental and our physical well-beings. Yeah. You can make yourself sick totally. in body and spirit. And if you're not experiencing joy when you create, you need to reassess what it is you're creating, how it is you're creating, and why you're creating. I am firmly in the camp that we should not suffer for art. It's not a prerequisite. They do not go hand in hand. We do not suffer for our art. I experience joy when I compose. I am bringing something into being that did not exist before I sat down at my keyboard and computer and went click, click, click on my mouse with Finale 25. That's incredible. That is joyous. That is absolutely joyous. And anytime I practice, if I feel myself suffering, I have to recognize that I am bringing a mindset to that practice session that is not healthy. That is not the saxophone. It is not the reed. It is not the piece of music. That's not what's bringing me suffering. I am creating the suffering because my mindset is not right.
I think another thing with suffering and being creative is that, you said this, but like, it's not possible.
It isn't.
Like you can't, like in the most literal sense, you can't be suffering and have the wherewithal to be creative, to find creative solutions to do something effectively and then produce something powerful.
Right.
And
so it blows my mind that we equate suffering with a creative state, when to me, suffering means an existential survival threat. Right. Talk to somebody who is very sick and without shelter and without food and ask them, hey, what did you create today? They will rightfully want to kick your ass.
So with suffering, I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm just...
No.
I feel like there's like somewhere in there in the definition is the word inability or something like that, like the inability brought on by some, like you said, external, something be like you said, the death of a loved one, a sickness, but I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think oftentimes people wish suffering on their creative selves to block their creativity. And why would a person want to block their creativity? Because they fear empathy.
Oh my God. I think that's.
They fear the elimination of their persona.
They're avoiding discomfort.
They're avoiding discomfort. Where if you think about creativity as inherently something that is uncomfortable, that eliminates your persona, and is fundamentally geared toward connecting with other human beings, it's pretty amazing how easy creativity becomes when you accept those three conditions, right? When you accept discomfort, when you accept the fact that you are fundamentally doing it for someone else, you know, and when you accept that it will erode your persona rather than reinforcing it,
Yeah.
then creativity becomes easy. I derive so much joy from composing a piece of music when I'm not thinking about, oh, how great is Alan Theisen as a composer that he is writing this. No, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this person who is a phenomenal performer is asking me to write a piece of music for them. Wow.
Yeah,
I am going to focus 100% of my creative intuition and energies on them. How can I write something that they think is cool? How can I write something that makes them sound fantastic in front of an audience? How can I write something that when they play it, a crowd just goes, whoa, did you hear blank?
Yes.
It's incredible how easy creativity becomes when you take yourself out of the damn equation.
I love that, man. This is totally connecting to everything you've said, like you said, with empathy and purpose. Right.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, what is your relationship to the blank page? Like before you started writing anything and you have that manuscript paper right in front of you, there's nothing on it.
Oh God, I love it. Isn't it incredible?
It's frightening.
Yes, which is precisely why you want to dive in.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like walking into a natatorium with an Olympic-sized swimming pool with completely still water. Fucking jump in.
Yeah.
Do it. Splash around, make noise, be crazy, dance, pull off your bathing suit. No one cares. Be naked in that. Be joyful. Splash around, dog paddle. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? That's the joy of it. That's that blank page. Be uncomfortable with that. Is it gonna feel weird? I hope it does. Recognize the fact that it feels weird. Be joyous about the weirdness. Life is weird. Life is unpredictable. Life is challenging. So enjoy that. Enjoy that aspect of it. You should not seek to eliminate that. You should seek to amplify that discomfort. Be weird. See what happens. You might discover a kind of swimming stroke that no other human being has ever done before, and you might be the best at it.
Oh,
Go for it. You'll never know. Splash around. And so, you know, it is daunting, but my God, isn't that the joy? Isn't that the joy? It's incredible to me. And again, when I begin composing, I start with an interview with the person commissioning me.
Yes, yes.
I do something exactly like this. Sometimes it lasts multiple hours where we have a conversation and we just talk about stuff. Like, what do you like doing with your instrument or voice? What do you not like doing? What do you wish you had a chance to do more? What do you never want to do again? What's some of your favorite repertoire that's new? What's some of your favorite repertoire that's old? What's a piece that you had to perform that, my God, you never want to perform again? I want to know all of that stuff.
Right. Oh,
right?
Yeah, totally.
And like, I mean, I'll even ask a performer, what's your favorite note to play or sing?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll start with that note. Why not? Like, you got to start somewhere. You might as well start with that person's favorite note.
Exactly.
Cool. Let's do it. Right? And so, the more you bring that collaborative, empathetic spirit into your own creative process, the easier it becomes. Mm-hmm. It becomes harder when you think you're creating to reaffirm your persona. Mm-hmm. That's when creativity becomes hard. And of course, then that person sits there and goes, oh, wow, I was just sweating blood today to come up with notes. Yeah, because you're coming up with notes that you think will make you sound good. What a bore.
Oh yeah, I think that aligns with people saying like this isn't my voice, or like,
Ugh.
you know, I use these types of chords and this type of texture. You know, I don't do that.
Right.
I mean, and that's totally valid also, in a sense that it's like
Sure, I guess, but you can also end up shutting yourself out to things that you never knew that you actually like,
yeah,
right?
totally,
You know?
totally.
It's like imagine kissing a romantic partner for the first time and they're like, "Hey, would you like to, use tongue when we kiss?" And being like, "Oh, well, I've never done that before. I don't know. Maybe not. Let's try something different. I don't know about you anymore." Just do it. Shut up. Try
Right,
it.
right.
If you hate it, then you can always backtrack. But come on, jump in the deep end.
Yeah, and
And
I think especially in the early stages when you're writing a piece, like when I said the blank page, for me it's frightening, but at the same time it's exciting because whatever I write, I know it's going to be something. It's not going to
right.
whether it's good or not, like that kind of doesn't matter in the beginning,
It doesn't.
you
It
know?
absolutely doesn't. Yeah. No, it doesn't matter. You know what's a dumb idea? Starting a whole ballet with a bassoon screeching out a high C.
Oh,
That's a
Shrinsky.
that's a dumb idea. I'm glad he followed it, right? I just follow dumb ideas. They're the best usually. Jump into those dumb ideas. Make it happen.
I think that's going to be the tagline of this episode. Follow dumb ideas. They're the
Follow dumb ideas.
best.
You should. You absolutely should. Because following dumb ideas usually means following the collective unconscious.
Sure.
It usually means following that thing that's going to empathetically connect you with a huge number of people. Because what is dumb to you is really your own persona being like, "Oh, no, this is breaking down what I think I am.
Yeah.
This is going contrary to the mask I wear. And I don't like that." Be like, good. Follow that dumb idea, because then maybe that mask will break like dry clay and fall off of your face.
I think that's accurate. I think that especially as creative people, I mean, that's literally what it is. Like we were saying earlier, if you're not pushing yourself and being in that discomfort in some way, then you're not progressing and
Right.
growing, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah.
I know for me, and this is me, like I have a level of self-consciousness that like just pushes me down, you know? So like
Okay.
I'll have an instance where I'm trying something out or whatever, and that like we said earlier, that vulnerability of being like, oh, here's something that I'm uncertain about, but I tried.
Right.
And then getting that no from everyone, and then you're like, oh shit. Whew.
Right.
You know? I think there's something like where you and I differ there, where you are like, I'm fucking doing this. Sometimes I'm like that. Sometimes I am. And sometimes I'm like, I can't.
Oh, well, I want to be real, man. I don't want to play myself up as like some sort of like compositional messiah. I'm sure as hell not. I'm still trying to figure shit out. I still throw up those blocks. I still be like, I still tell myself, "Oh, no, I can't do that." Right?
Right.
No. That's a battle I constantly face, and I have to kick my own ass. That has to happen,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's an uncomfortable battle, right? That's what you got to do, though. I practiced for almost 90 minutes tonight, and I sounded like shit. That's okay. Tomorrow's another day. I'm gonna do it again.
I love that.
I'm not gonna be like, well, I sounded bad tonight, I guess I'm not gonna practice tomorrow. It's like, no, I'm probably gonna practice twice as long tomorrow, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lean into the fact that I was not making good sounds tonight. All right, fine, good. I'm glad I didn't make it. I challenge myself to practice 30 minutes more tomorrow. Let's do it.
I was just gonna say, I love that you're like picking a fight with yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to pick a fight with yourself in the best possible way, because if you don't pick a fight with the negative part of you, your negative part of you is sure going to pick a fight with you.
Oh yeah.
And that negative part, like, you will bully yourself into never acting. And so you've got to pick a fight with that part of you that talks shit about you. You've got to pick a fight with that motherfucker that's deep inside you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Find that little asshole and beat the shit out of him.
I gave mine a name whenever I have
Really?
this, like, oh yeah, I did.
That's awesome. What's the name of your inner asshole?
My inner asshole is called Feisty Little Bitch.
Oh, I love it. FLB.
Yeah, that's right.
Gotta find FLB and just like challenge them on the playground. It's you and me.
You want my lunch money, motherfucker?
Yeah, you're gonna have to take it. You might take it, but I'm gonna get a lick in there somehow.
Exactly.
I'll punch you in your ear. We'll see what happens.
And then see how creative you are with one ear.
Yeah. Exactly. Nice, man. I like that. That was great. It's like you might use my lunch money to buy something, but your ear's gonna hurt when you do it. You're gonna remember. You're gonna remember. You have to. You have to push back. You have to push back, because that's that persona. That's that mask that wants to say, oh, you know, it would be really great. Maybe you should just not play saxophone anymore. You know, then you wouldn't have to worry about that. Wouldn't that be nice? You could just sit at home and watch 8 hours of Netflix and eat mashed potatoes. Wouldn't that be real nice? And then your brain starts going, yeah, that would be real nice. Maybe I won't compose anything anymore, right? It's so weird that, like, you know, I think about creativity as sharing naked baby photos. Because, like, if you ask somebody like, hey, would you share a naked baby photo with a stranger? They'd be like, no. You'd be like, why not? You know that there are naked baby photos of them.
Yeah.
And that was you from so long ago. Who cares?
Right.
Like, that's a part of the shared human experience, right?
Right.
It's so weird that we would be embarrassed by that, because it's something that we all experience. We were all babies at one time. We were all like little, like, piles of goo that came out of our mom, like a couple months before that picture was taken. We were all there. That's part of who we are. And yet we would be really weirded out by people seeing our naked baby photos. And being a creative artist is recognizing the fact that everybody has that, and you get to be like, hey, look at this, like, weird little thing my hair was doing. Isn't that funny? Right?
Well, I gotta say, man, I think we just came up with a title for your memoir if you ever write one.
Naked baby photos.
Yeah.
I think Ben Folds has an album that was like all like early shit that Ben Folds 5 did. I think it's called like Naked Baby Pics, or not pics. I think it's called Naked Baby Photos. But yeah, I'm gonna take it. I'm a Ben Folds fan. I'll steal that as my memoir. Naked Baby Photos.
Yeah, exactly.
The story of this asshole who thought he could run 7 careers simultaneously by Alan Theisen.
But he did it with such purpose.
He did it with such purpose, because I just want to connect with folks. You know?
Oh my God.
That's what I learned a long time ago. You know, I found the pieces of mine that were always hardest to write were the ones that I was trying to write to show everybody just how smart I was. What a miserable fucking goal that is.
Totally.
Right? Instead of just being like, hey, what if I wrote a piece that made this person sound good? God, those pieces just pop right out. Imagine that, right?
It's an interesting thought.
Stop trying to be clever. Be sincere. The world has enough clever. That's just people taking their masks and rubbing them together, creating friction. Being like, wow, isn't this neat? No, it's really not. It's boring. You get old, you know?
Write what you want to write, sort of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And write what you want to write that you think will help other people grow and connect as musicians and as audience members, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So, if we're all wearing masks and trying to kiss through the mask, it's just gonna click. There's not gonna be any contact there. You have to get rid of those masks. And then you can start to connect.
And there's no authenticity if you're wearing a
Right.
mask.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's not your true self.
That's not your true self.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find your true self by removing that mask. That's it.
That's beautiful.
That's the beautiful wisdom right there. It's not mine. It's just out there, right?
Dude, I think this is a good spot right here to
I think
end
it. I think it
off.
is. I think it is 2.5 hours, man. This is gonna be like. You're gonna have to warn your listeners. You're gonna have to be like, buckle up, buttercups.
You're in for a ride.
You are in.
We traversed.
You are in for the full 150-minute experience. Pull up a chair. Here we go.
Grab some scotch.
Grab some scotch. I don't know what, like, speaking of Christopher Walken, I said grab your chair in a weird, like, walking cadence.
I missed it. Damn.
That was really weird. I did do an impression. It was just like something about the cadence.
It just sort of worked out that way.
Yeah, just kind of got there. So, yeah, I think now that I'm two very full glasses of scotch in and a beautiful conversation in, I'm going to find a little bit of food.
Yeah.
Do a little nighttime meditation, do a little reading. There's a book of Wallace Stevens poems that I'm going to get back to and see how that speaks to me. And yeah, thank you, Adam, for this absolutely beautiful conversation. I really value it, brother.
Dude, I appreciate you wanting to be a part of this. And
oh my gosh,
this was such a fantastic conversation. I mean, this was, for first of all, like, definitely the longest, and that's not a complaint either. That's
I feel you, man. It's cool, man.
And I love every little direction we went in, and all the things we talked about. And you said some powerful things.
Well, I appreciate you, man. I thank you for saying that, and I hope your listeners vibe with a lot of what we were talking about, and I hope they feel free to message us if they have some thoughts about what we said. I think that's gonna be really powerful. I hope this connects, man. Thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, real quick, if you want to plug any of your social media or anything, how people can reach out.
Oh yeah, man. I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. On Instagram, I am Dr. Alan Theisen, Dr. Alan Theisen. On Twitter, I'm just Alan Theisen. I'm pretty easy to find that way. Actually, one of the easiest ways that you can find me is just to go to my website. If you go to my website, you can find all of my social media stuff that way. Yeah, it's pretty easy. So it's just alantheisen.com, AlanTheisen.com. And you can catch up with everything I do as a composer, as a saxophonist, as an author, as an educator. Ton of resources on my website. There are scores you can buy. There are pieces that you can listen to for free. There's a ton of stuff there. And, through my website, you can also find the website for my fantastic duo with Megan Enan, who has also been a guest on this podcast, of course. Megan Enan and Alan Theisen present. So you could just go to miatp.com and see all the rad shit that we've been up to for 4 years now. Woo. And the stuff that we have planned. Best duo partner in the world. God, it's just magic. I just love it. I love her to death. I love the magic that we make together. It's so much fun. We have so much planned. Y'all don't even know. We have so much. It is like what we have done the past 3.5 years is just the tip of the iceberg. It is, yeah, it runs deep, man. We have stuff planned years from now, literally years from now, we have stuff planned. It's going to be really great. Really great.
I'm excited about that.
Well, and thank you, Adam.
I know all these people are going to be excited too.
Thank you, man.
You two are fantastic, both as people and as a unit.
Oh man, thank you, Adam. That's really beautiful. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. Yeah, we have a great time. We have a big rehearsal coming up next weekend because we have a recording project in December. We're gonna lay down some stuff in the studio. It's gonna be really great. We have an album coming out in early 2021. We have music videos coming out. We're just gonna like we're gonna be popping. You're gonna be seeing and hearing a lot from us, and we're gonna be bringing that energy.
Hell yeah.
To as many folks as we can, because that's what we like to do. You know,
Ah,
our motto of new music everywhere. You know, that's something that we are big believers in, and you know, our recording projects are going to be a huge part of that. So, yeah. Can you see via the Zoom video that I have this giant Band-Aid on my chin right here?
I did not notice it.
You did not
until
notice
this
that. All right,
exact
far
moment.
up. That's cool. All right, cool. Yeah, I got in a fight this morning with my razor.
Oh God.
I
That's-
actually have not cut myself this bad since like 17 years ago. It's really wild. And I don't even know how it happened. I was just like shaving, everything's fine. And then like my arm just went blip, blip, or something. I don't know what happened. And then just blood just pouring out of my chin. It was like 30 minutes of my morning just holding like a whole box of Kleenex in my chin. It was crazy. And then, yeah, it was wild. That's how I started my day. And so, but I had a good laugh about it
yeah.
because, you know, I recognized that as one of the 40% that existence would throw at me. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever.
Right. There
You
it
know,
is. There it is.
It's exactly. So you get to laugh and shake it off when the universe throws something stupid at you. And, yeah, so that's part of the fun. Well, the good news is when you're wearing a pandemic mask to teach it, none of my students today were like, Dr. Tyson, why is there a giant Band-Aid on your chin? I was like, well, let me tell you.
Yeah, let me tell you.
You know, I just had a big mask on my face. So,
get to
Adam,
cover
you
it
are
up.
yeah, exactly. You are a blessing to the universe. Thank you very much, brother. I hope you have a beautiful night. I can't wait to hear this episode. I hope people resonate with it. And I can't wait to hear where this podcast goes forever. This is really awesome, man. Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on here. I love you to death. And this is just fantastic. So
This is awesome, man.
I can't wait for us to get to do this again. And
Yeah, me too.
you know, more scotch, more movies, more
absolutely. I'm a chatty guy. You can get me going. That's absolutely no problem. So yeah, man, this is really fantastic, and I'm eagerly awaiting to see which of my quotes from this interview you pull to hype this episode. I'm gonna be like, oh shit, I said what? But you just do it. You lean into it, man. Lean into it.
I will. Yeah, I have no idea yet,
thing.
but there's so many options.
There's gonna be some juicy options, I'm sure.